That's Paul from University of Montreal. So today what we're going to do, let's say 20 minutes later, is we'll just talk about ransomware, present a methodology developed, which is going to be much clearer now that we've been through how Bitcoin works. And then what this research is about is sort of assess the direct financial impact of ransomware, so how much money each ransomware attacker is making, and then discussion and limits in future work. Probably not going to go too deep into that. You probably know what ransomware is. Raise your hand if you do. Okay, I'm still gonna. So ransomware is basically just a malware that if you click on the link that you receive in the email and it infects your computer, it's going to encrypt all your files. And for you to recover your files, you're going to have to pay money in Bitcoin to them. So they'll display an address like that and say, where is it, the address? Yeah, they'll display an address and they'll say, if you want to recover your file, well then pay money to this address, right? And what happens is that usually you send money to an address, but remember, if you send money to an address, you don't have the private key to the address you sent money to. So like, they can decide to give you back your files or not. It's basically on the best interest if you have no leverage once the money is sent. Yeah, it happened, you know, we always hear about like hospitals being hit by ransomware or schools, and that gets really tricky because the files are patients' files, so they want to recover it. But in the end, you have the question of recovering it, but also now that it's into a third party's hand, what's going to happen, right?
So they don't have a backup strategy.
Well, we'll see that later. There's backup that can be like a simple solution to ransomware, obviously. So ransomware, a few years ago, like it was considered a serious threat. We see that it raises fear and concern among potential victims. The computer is your personal stuff, right? If somebody can steal it from you and ask you for a ransom from it, like it does feel kind of frightful, right, for victims. It's potentially highly profitable. So, like I just give here a quote, like ransomware too profitable to go away, but it's just because in the industry it was the only sort of discourse that was around it. Ransomware profit, cyber criminals are making millions of dollars chilling on boats by like stealing your files, right? But like at the time when I was doing the research, I was like, global and rival statistics are missing. So we had no way of actually knowing whether or not people were making money, like, and how much they were making, and whether it was millions or, you know. And most of the statistics were produced by private corporations with no methodology, no data available, nothing for you to actually assess whether that person actually really made $30 million or not, right? Industry-driven law. So at that time, we thought we had a unique opportunity. So we wanted to quantify the lower bound direct financial impact of ransomware attack. And I say lower bound direct financial impact, and I don't say revenue, because you don't know if like money that is sent to an address, if it's cashed out right away or not. But like Bitcoin is so volatile that it could be different. So just for that, you can talk about revenue. And we say lower bound because it's based on the data set that we have. But if there's more addresses out there or more people that got attacked, we can actually access it, right? And most ransoms are paid in Bitcoin. Bitcoin transactions are available publicly. And there's already custom heuristics and tools that have been developed to extract information from each Bitcoin transaction. So just for that, we felt like we were finding a new opportunity and being the only one to do it. It turned out that it was not the case. So at the time where I was doing the research, Google published a research on the same matter and the same methodology. And they presented at Black Hat USA in 2018. So at that time, I was a little bit mad. But in the end, what's cool is that their findings is very close to ours. So we sort of have that research reproducibility that is sort of matching up together. And more studies on the matter is actually worth it, right? So the research goal was to develop a data-driven method for identifying, quantifying, and comparing payments and revenues of given ransomware families. So what we did is we found what we call a seed data set, so 7,000 Bitcoin addresses related to 35 ransomware families. So we had a list of addresses, and we knew that, for example, this address was from somebody who was attacked by a ransomware that called itself X-Locker. And then you have like different names, right? They say that on average, there's about 550 ransomware families that have been found in the wild and reported.
Which is the best one? Who's the best one extracting ransomware from ransom from people?
You'll see.
I want to invest in them.
That is an expansion. So we have 7,000 addresses we know are related to 35 families, okay? How do we expand that data set? Here, I'm just going to skim really quickly because we've been over this. Each Bitcoin address is related to a public-private key pair. So you have a private key, public key that generates the address. As I said earlier, private key is used to generate a Bitcoin address, but also sign a transaction. And once the transaction is signed, it's accepted in the ledger of the blockchain through the mining process. That is all clear, right? Okay. And then you can see the money flowing from addresses to addresses. Clustering heuristics, that's where it becomes a little bit tricky, okay? And that's where you sort of see that the Bitcoin ecosystem is not just addresses sending money to other addresses, but it's rather clusters of addresses sending money to other clusters of addresses. So if you have transaction 1, where you have address A and B sending money to whatever other address, okay? And then you have transaction 2, with address A and C sending money to whatever other address. Okay? So you have AB and then AC. So A is being reused in 2 transactions. What can you infer from this? Remember, to be able to have this transaction being accepted in the blockchain, you have to have the private key of A and C. In order to have this transaction to be accepted in the blockchain, you have to have. So, if you think about it, well, no doubt that the person or the organization behind these 2 transactions are the same. Why? Because to be able to assign transaction 1, you have to have the private key of A and B. And to be able to sign transaction 2, you have to have the private key of A, but you sign, right? So you end up having a cluster of individuals saying A, B, C is most likely the same individual because of this clustering heuristic. Good? And that's when it gets even better, is when you look at this. And what happens is you know that this address here, for example, belongs to WikiLeaks. So you know that this one belongs to WikiLeaks. What can you infer? That A, B, and C belongs to WikiLeaks, right? So what happens is that through that clustering heuristics and the reuse of Bitcoin addresses in the ecosystem, you end up having clusters that you associate together. And as soon as you know that one address in that cluster belongs to whom, you can say that the whole cluster belongs to that address. And that is slowly how you de-anonymize Bitcoin. Cool, no?
So you always leave a trail.
Always. There's a cool open source platform. If any of you wants to make research in Bitcoin, there's a cool, this open source platform has been developed by the Austrian Institute of Technology. I'll present to you quickly how it works, but if you're interested in doing research on Bitcoin, you can come see me, and I will put you in contact with the developers, and they'll give you access to it, right? Because anything that is a trusted relationship with research, we're super happy to share the platform. So I wanted to do just a quick demo. So see, that's GraphSense. It covers Bitcoin, Bitcash, and 2 other cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin and Zcash too. And it's because mainly it's based on the same kind of process, blockchain. So basically what the tool allows you to do is to be able to see the address, but also see it's part of which cluster. Okay, so this address we know is part of a cluster of 4,000 other, 4.5 other addresses. The small box here is based on the address, so you'll have 2 addresses send money to that address, and 2 addresses receive money from that address. And the big box here represents the cluster. That's the cluster ID based on the platform. And you can see the number of addresses that sent money, the number of clusters. Like the transactions here are based on clusters, and here based on addresses. And what's even cooler is, so that's here you'll have the address information. You can have incoming transaction, outgoing transaction that you can actually export in Excel. And then, you know, the related transaction, remember with the transaction hash, the value, and the timestamp. What I wanted to say when I said when it's even cooler is that if you click rather on the cluster, then you have information, cluster information, right? So the ID of the cluster, how many transactions, neighbors is number of, I'm pretty sure it's clusters, yeah. And what's even cooler is if you click here, well, if one address in this cluster is known, then the tag is going to be here. So here we know that this address belongs to Puerto Rico CX. Sorry, this cluster belongs to Puerto Rico CX. So we know that that address is within a cluster that is known, that is Puerto Rico CX. Puerto Rico CX, do you know what it is? It's a Canadian exchange that was shut down through like a huge scam. It's very vague in my head, but the owner is reported dead in Asia. People don't think that he is, and everybody who had money in that exchange lost it. That's the story. But at that time it was cool because you could say, hey, here's Puerto Rico CX, so if you have an address that is related to malicious activity and you're a police officer, then you can go and knock on Puerto Rico CX door, say, hey, this address is within your organization, can we see like what information you have on it, right? Is that cool? Okay. So if there's a lot more about GraphSense that I'm not going to go through today, but as I said, like as researchers or master's students, undergrad students, if you want to work on this, I'm super happy to share and provide logins to it. The platform is open source. If you want to reproduce the whole platform on your server personally, you can go on GraphSense.info and go in the GitHub repository and just redo it all yourself. The logins that I can share is based on servers that are established at the Austrian Institute of Technology. Oh yeah. And even cooler is if you're geeks and you know like clicking is not your thing, well there's an API where you can fetch all the information that you want in JSON format and then pipeline it into Python and try to map things yourself. Okay, and only you need a token, like an API token, but that can be shared too. Good, so let's go back to the research, right? What we had was, I told you 7,000 addresses related to families. What I do then is I use the GraphSense API and I expand my data set through the clustering heuristics that I explained before, right? So if an address that belongs to a ransomware was reused across the blockchain through transactions, then I can associate all the addresses in these transactions as belonging to that ransomware too, right? So that I extend my data set that way, and I get more and more addresses I know are related to ransomware. And that's like my expanded data set with more addresses in each because of the clustering heuristics I just talked about. And then here I give you an example of each family that you have, so Lucky, Cryptexis, Locker, CryptoLocker, DNA Locker. These were the number of seed addresses that I had, and through the clustering heuristics, the number of clusters they were related to, and the expanded data set. So for example, CryptoLocker, we had 2 addresses associated to that ransomware, which belonged to one cluster that had 968 other addresses. And this methodology was confirmed even in another paper that like the researchers worked on CryptoLocker as well. So it sort of validated our methodology to, you know, just applying the heuristics and ending up with the same amount. Is like you're like, okay, I'm good. And then what we did was basically apply time filtering heuristics. So any transaction that happened before the moment where the attack started, I removed, right? Because I wanted to access the minimum payments. And then that's when you start the data analysis, right? So you have, let's say, 968 transactions related to CryptoLocker, as I said, and you want to access the minimum revenue, right? So what would you do? Would you just take all the incoming transactions and just say, oh, CryptoLocker made, I don't know, $30 million because all the addresses belonging to CryptoLocker have received that amount? That could be one way to do it, right? That's how most of the industry people are doing it. But let's instead try to follow the money trace. So this is my first analysis, and I just like to show how crappy it was, because most researchers are always like, hey, you see how awesome everything I do, but like you spend lots of time just trying to figure out what you're actually doing, right? So here what you have is the incoming transactions, and then you have ransomware addresses in green, there's not a lot. Input addresses, so addresses that are sending money to the ransomware addresses. And if they're both, so if they're input addresses and ransomware addresses, then they're orange, right? So all the blue here sent money to the orange, and then the orange was both like send money to another orange one and receive money from the blue ones. So that's when you think and you wonder what it means, right? Well, if you have addresses that are orange, it means that they receive money from ransomware addresses, but that they send money to ransomware addresses. Does that mean that like CryptoLocker ransomware authors attack themselves and then like send money to themselves to sort of recover the files? They're probably transferring it in between their addresses. Let's say I attack you, and you. Each of you send me $500, but then I take your address. And I'm like, oh, let's take this, this, and this, and put it in your address. Anyway, it's mine, right? So I'm starting to play with the money like that. So if I were to take all the incoming transactions, and let's say that this amounted to $35 million, what I would do is recount lots of money. Because if the ransomware author is just sending money to itself, then you double the payment all the time, right? And I also learned that if you want to work with graphs, it's easier to work with smaller graphs. So here I give you an example of Crypto Hitman. That's a smaller ransomware family. What I did is instead of studying the incoming transactions, I studied the outgoing transactions, so where the money is going. Red address is an address belonging to Crypto Hitman. Gray address is an address that received money from an address that is known to belong to Crypto Hitman. So what you can see here is that you have a few red addresses sending money to a few gray addresses. Well, this gray address, which I don't know through the clustering heuristics whether or not it belongs to Crypto Hitman, but I know that it received twice money from crypto addresses belonging to Crypto Hitman, right? So this address, I would flag and say, oh, I want to continue follow this one, right? I wouldn't want to continue follow this one just because it doesn't give me any more information. It could be an exchange. But here I have at least an instance that two addresses sent money to that one. And here, well, I have another address. It received, it's the same process I just explained here, right? It's just these three addresses sending money to the same, an address that belongs to, Crypto Hitman. But then, well, this address is of interest, right? Because it's not in the cluster, but it still receives money from 5 other addresses that are related to Crypto Hitman. All right. So that's when we sort of tag in what we call collectors. Collectors are basically addresses used to collect or aggregate payments from, whether they're in the clustering heuristics or not, whether we know they belong to CryptoLocker or not, we still tag them as collectors. So here I gave you the most obvious collector in the whole data. It's from the Lucky ransomware. So what you have here is most payments from victims sent to that address that we know belongs to CryptoLocker, and then sent to that gray address, with 2 other addresses with 50 Bitcoins sent here. So maybe all the payments here wasn't in my data set, all the payments here were not in that data set, but here you can see that this address is key, right? You really want to follow where that one is going to go. So based on that methodology, what I would say is collectors associated with large clusters with thousands of transactions can be considered the end root of tracing ransomware payments. So if I go back here, and I look at this address, I input it in GraphSense, and I see that this address belongs to Quadrica CX. Well, there's no point for me to try to trace where that address money is going to go because I know it belongs to an exchange. So what I'm rather going to say is go see Quadrica CX and be like, hey, who is behind that address? So if the cluster, the bigger the cluster is, and the more likely it actually belongs to either an exchange or a casino or any other organizations that are used to launder money, right? So it's very important. So if you follow traces of money, as soon as it goes into a large cluster, you can be like, okay, I'm just going to stop because if I continue following that, I'm just going to exponentially increase my data set for nothing. And what happened in our investigation is that we looked at the collectors that were tagged, and we ended up 86 exchange organization, 47 sites, and 12 mixing services. So ransomware authors do cash out within 2 or 3 like transactions, right? That's super, sorry, within 1 transaction. And that's super interesting because for law enforcement like perspective, if you follow the money trace and you're not even trying to hide where they're cashing out, I mean, it's something that's possible to go further into an investigation. Gambling sites, well, you can't do much. What's interesting is in criminology, we often say that criminals are laundering money through casinos. You know, remember mafia mob going to casinos and sort of playing money to sort of clean it. Well, we see the same thing here, the same process. And it's crazy because if you go to satoshidice.com, when you remember, like, you have the private key of your address, but if you go on that website, create an account, you'll have an address associated to your account. So you send money from the address you have to that account, but then like that address belongs to Satoshi Dice. So Satoshi Dice has like huge clusters, but then it's easy for you. You play your money, play your money, play your money. And then once you're done, you cash out. You say to Satoshi Dice, send money to that address I have the private key on, and your money is kind of laundered. You see what I mean? That's a process that is highly used. And mixing services, they're less. I would say I feel like they're less and less popular, but mixing services are basically. I think this is a better idea. Mixing services was based on laundering money. So the idea was to send money to a service that would receive money from many people and would resend it to you, but you wouldn't be able to trace you back to that transaction, right? So the better example that I can give on that is you have a little bag. You give me a cent. I put that cent in the bag, mix it, and then give you back a cent, but no one will know if your cent is the cent from the other person or not, right? So it's basically this idea. However, what mainly happened is mixing services is somebody would start that, criminals would start using it, and they'd be like, oh, okay, my money is laundered. And then one day the person who had the mixing service would wake up and be, oh, I have $1 million holding in my platform, why don't I just shut it down? That's what happened often, and then they lose their money and they're pissed off because you gotta trust that tier that you're giving your money to for laundering it for you, right? I think you had a question?
Yeah, when you were studying the data set, right? And you went to SatoshiDice.com, right? Mm-hmm. So could you see all the addresses that were associated with SatoshiDice.com?
Yeah, because it's a huge cluster, right?
So you found that cluster?
So I followed the addresses I knew were ransomware to a collector. It was a gray collector, as I showed, so not associated to ransomware. And that gray collector belonged to Satoshi Dice cluster with like thousands and thousands and thousands of addresses and transactions. So think about it. Never like be like, oh, let's trace where the money goes from that address because you never got the possession, right? Cool. And now that you've sort of seen the methodology and how it works, we can try to assess the lower bound direct financial impact. So here I just give you the mean payment per family with standard mean error. So what I did is I took all the incoming transactions related to each address of a ransomware family, took out the collectors because I didn't want to recount the money twice, and I looked at the mean payment. So here you can have, for example, different families and how much money they're asking you. It's always in between $100 to $2,000, right? Very low. And here what I give you is the timeline, like you have a timeline here of payments and the cumulative distribution of payment through time. So what's interesting is that for lots of ransomware families, you'll have also like often some sort of a peak and then a flat line. So that's because they're attacking a lot, attacking, people are paying, but then like, you know, you can sort of assess that it flattens here. So if we were to sort of try to monitor in time transaction, like we could sort of see a new ransomware going in, attacking, you could try to map it, and if it starts to be flatline, you'd be like, oh, the attack is finished, right? What's more even like, interesting too is that Samsung goes more like this, right? So it doesn't follow a sort of curve like that. Like WannaCry, you probably heard about WannaCry. You know, they just attacked, got blocked, and then stopped. Well, Samsung has a different methodology. What they do is they attack businesses, and for each computer that is encrypted, they ask for a certain amount of money. So if they encrypt all of their business computers, they ask for more money. If they only encrypt one, they ask for less. So it's based on the number of computers. And it just feels like it's highly targeted. So that's probably why these three are based on just malware. And this one is highly targeted, trying to like gain people to pay and like talking to these people because these are businesses and not how to do that.
What are the typical hosts that we bring into Windows or the Linux or whatever?
Depends. Some of them are phishing links, so it doesn't matter. It just depends on whether or not the person clicks on it, and maybe the malware will have different extensions, whether Windows or iOS. But like the main operating system that is being attacked is obviously Windows. Sorry to say.
I guess time to change.
Linux. Go to Linux. It's awesome, and but iOS too. Like Apple is less attacked. Like it's known for that too.
Why is it less attacked?
I think it's the way that the operating system is being built. Windows has more vulnerabilities, and Windows is also more used by companies, so it's better, like by common people. So it's better to sort of develop malware targeting Windows just because you have a better pool of victims. I think there's something about that too. So most enterprises will not run on Mac; they'll run on Windows. But like my opinion here is really just on the fly. I would have to make more research to reply to that. Okay. So if you look at the lower bound direct financial impact, so here you have the top 15 families. The one that made the most money is Lucky, who made within 2.5 years $7 million. Then you have CryptXX, who made $1.8 million. DMA Locker, $1.5 million. So these are the 3 families that are making a lot of money. Remember, I had 35 families. What you can notice from this is that it slowly and quickly goes to the 15th one that only made $8,000. So like the ones that are missing here are not making that much money either. These are lower bound though. Some of them are probably making more than others. You asked me which one was the most efficient. Well, Lucky, super efficient. It was super efficient, at least when it was running. So from mid-2013 to mid-2017, which was what the time frame that our data covered, you could say that the market for ransomware payments has been more of $12.5 million. The Google research found closely to that, but they didn't have exactly the same families, so we could probably merge both and say that the market was worth about $20 million overall for all the actors. But still, it's lower bound.
So we're closing a lot of these loopholes, these vulnerabilities, so that you can maybe one day things start sort of trending downwards in terms of ransomware.
Yes, that's what's going on right now, and it's even more interesting because it seems a lot, $12 million, but you think how many people are behind that? It's lots of families. It isn't that much in the sense that this is lower bound, obviously, but there is money to be made, but it's maybe not as the cybersecurity industry would like to put it, like the most profitable, where like people are on boats and chilling out with rich people. What you can conclude from that is, because it's all lower bound, right? But what you can see is that the market is still heavy, right? You have 3 families that make 86% of the market, and then the 32 others only have 12% of the market.
What countries are they located? Do you have any information on that?
Attribution in cybersecurity is not quite as like.
You think more likely they're probably distributed? A team of folks will be distributed across the globe?
No idea. An interesting research that should be done is analyze exactly this, the profit of each ransomware family, but based on whether or not decryption tools and decryption keys have been advertised by like cybersecurity researchers. So basically, there's a website called Ransomware, No More Ransom, that publishes, like they actually take malware samples related to ransomware, they reverse engineer it, and then create decryption tools for free that they advertise on that website. So it'd be super interesting to see if the families that are not that successful are families that are related to decryption tools being already available online. Something that I should do, actually. Yeah, I just want to say it's similar finding to the Google research. So they also saw a top heavy market. That's not what we said. So in the discussion, like I always say that it does tell you that law enforcement should mobilize the resources on a small number of highly capable players that could lead to takedowns of a major negative impact on the ransomware economy. So rather than focusing on the small ones that are not making that much money, you can focus on the ones that are making a lot and try to sort of break that idea that they're super successful. We also find that there's a super big discrepancy in the total amount found and the damages caused by ransomware attacks. So if we say that the minimum market is $12.7 million, then you see that the crypto wall ransomware, like the estimated damage of that ransomware is $325 million. So they're making some money, but they're like causing much more damages overall. And why is like not as much as we would expect? Well, I already explained the initiative No More Ransom. You just click on the decryption tool here, and you have a list of decryption tools available for each ransomware that they've been able to do it. So that's super interesting. There's tools and solutions that exist now. So basically now in antiviruses and other security tools, if your computer starts to encrypt files by itself, it will block it and say you're probably infected, because you know it's easy to sort of see a ransomware operation starting just because it encrypts all your files. So just add a rule to your virus, like antivirus, firewall, whatever security product you have, that if your computer starts to encrypt everything, just stop it and like report it, right? And to solve ransomware, you only need a backup. So if somebody has your file and asks you for money, maybe if you have a backup, you just don't care, wipe out your systems and just put back your system, right?
That's like easy peasy.
Yeah, but backups are hard for industry.
No,
Who has a backup here? Like,
Always.
about half of the people, see? Yeah, that usually works. If you can like achieve, if you can go on your OneDrive online afterwards. Yeah, it's not on your operating system. And many victims do not decide to pay. So they say that the number of victims that actually paid ransomware in the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Survey Canada is less than 10%. Where it's at. So study limitations. Well, obviously, this based on the number of seed addresses we had and the effectiveness of the heuristics I told you about. And it's limited to the number of tags that we found through GraphSense to be able to say that this was this ransomware or this ransomware. And obviously, if they're using more and more the Cumulative and mixing services, we'll have a hard time because it messes up with the clustering heuristics. So that can sort of create bias in the data. What we want to do is extend our analysis to additional ransomware families. So the more we have, the better idea we will have of the whole market. Maybe take into account emergence of closed Bitcoin cryptocurrencies and study other illicit activities. I'm super interested in money laundering, but like that's further research that we should do. If you want to reproduce the research, I told you about the GraphSense database platform. The ransomware seed dataset is available online, the expanded and the seed. So if you wanted to redo it all, you could. And we have also published our code on GitHub. Thank you so much. That's all from me today. I can answer questions.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Does Google ever get attacked? Azure, all these cloud services, AWS, they ever have an issue? Are they getting attacked?
They are the companies that invest the most in security. So it's usually for small businesses that get attacked. Yeah. Any other questions?
Cool.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed that. And yeah, keep in touch. If you have any questions, my email is here, the Twitter is there. Contact me, let me know, and I'm super open. Don't forget about NorthSec too, that I told you first, right? I hope to see you there. Okay? Thanks.